I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Anatomy of a Movie. This week's Operation Transcendence. I'm John Comerford, joined in the studio by Marissa Serafini.
Hello, everyone.
Sarah Stratton.
Hello.
Dimitri Panas.
Hey, movie fans.
And in the booth.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Phil Svitek.
Phil Svitek. I thought you were going to say your own name, Phil. All right, ladies and gentlemen, how do we feel about this? Did it transcend your expectations? Did it fall short? Where were we? Marissa, you start.
I think it's definitely an interesting concept, that the idea of singularity and how this movie was set in the not so distant future. Mm-hmm. And it shows that this could be somewhat of a reality and people can kind of understand what could be happening and that this can affect everyone in the world. And I thought that concept is always fascinating, and I think they did a great job delving into that.
I mean, to start off with, I think that my expectations going into this movie were not hard to transcend. For I think everything that I'd read, heard about, was pretty much solidly negative. I wasn't seeing anything good out there about it. And I saw it, and it's not my favorite movie of the year. It's not even my favorite sci-fi film.
So did that affect your viewership of it because you went in there knowing this? Did you? I
think that I went in being like, okay, I don't want to just jump on this bandwagon and dislike it because everyone else does. But so then you
found good reason to.
I think that I was pulled in multiple directions. I think that, like Marissa, I think the subject matter is really interesting. I think technology plays a really big part. I know that was a big reason why a lot of the cast came involved and they agreed that it's an appropriate subject, and that I agree with. I thought that visually it was interesting. To me, my biggest problem was due to the pacing in the middle, I was able to actually think about what I was watching. I wasn't completely absorbed. I was not completely pulled in, and I found myself really looking at this movie and analyzing it in the middle of the film, which is something that I don't really like to do. Right. Like you want to be swept up in the story, right? Not and especially in something that has so much potential to be visually stimulating. It just had so much room, and it really was limitless, and so that kind of fell through for me.
Got it. Dimitri. Don't pull any punches. Let's go.
Yeah, this movie made me angry. I went into it with big expectations, and prior to the reviews coming out, a huge fan of Wally Pfister's work. He's worked with Christopher Nolan, Dark Knight movies. He won the Academy Award for Inception. Really knows how to make a movie look fantastic. And I figured, his next step would be directing, and this movie will at least look good, which it did. He had some talent in his cast, which they gave him, but man, oh man, Ashevitz, right from the get-go, the plot holes were bigger than the XD screen that I was watching this on. Okay. I just felt that this was a failure from the studio side of things. Like, it was almost like they gave him a first draft to direct, and and it was from the get-go. I mean, when you do start analyzing a movie halfway through, when things are like, when one of the main Johnny Depp's character gets shot, and you later find out that it was a radioactive bullet, or it was laced with it was polonium, which is, I looked up polonium, and polonium is pretty serious stuff. The mere fact that the doctors missed it, and they even say, oh well, he had it on his wounds, but you thought that would be just okay, and we're gonna sew him up and be on stuff like that. Once that thread started to get pulled from me, there were other things. Like, if I'm wrapped up in a movie, and I think we all can, we've talked about this. We can all get so wrapped up in a movie that we've talked about the flaws, and
you can forgive the flaws.
You forgive the flaws. And this one, I love the concept too. I'm a big science fiction guy. I love artificial intelligence, and it's such a great playground to play with. And for science fiction, it explores humanity and technology together. I mean, we talked about her, and I was so hoping to be able to compare, like this is the scary part of her, but I was so focused on, these various plot. I couldn't get past it to the end, and I felt bad for Wally Pfister. And I sort of feel bad for some of the Well, Johnny Depp is taking a lot of heat, and it's not because of him.
No.
But
so you had the challenges with the script. Phil,
Yeah.
did that echo for you? Did you have difficulty in it, or did you accept it? Did they not bother you? Or were you fine with the whole movie?
There was portions of the movie, but I think it was story elements that I disagreed with. Again, there's a lot of themes here at work, and that shows through the characters, and so I disagreed and agreed with certain portions of it, and that's what, for me, I gravitated towards, and that's I can't wait to speak more to that when we get there.
Okay. All right. And it was a little uneven for me. I certainly understand you have challenges. I had my own challenges with some of the plot holes and stuff and not fulfilling an expectation. But I didn't really have an expectation going into the movie. Just when I thought the first act was done pretty well. And so they set up kind of a high bar from the get-go. I was like, oh, great. All right. Okay. So, it's not like it's not a movie we haven't seen where they're going to have AI. Like you mentioned her. I mean, you get that. But then it kind of just didn't really reached the zenith I wanted it to. Let's put it that way. Even the love story, which I thought was fascinating, that hear this love story that transcends, AI and stuff, and he's always there and wants to find a way to come back. Even that kind of fell short because they never really got there. They didn't really keep that going. But anyway, so yes.
Yeah, I was going to say too that the villains for me were highly unsympathetic. Like I couldn't. Yeah, that was another main issue I had, and you're right, it didn't transcend. And to your point where you talked about the first act, up until he gets shot, would you say?
Well,
like when he gets shot, things get blown up and things like that. I was like, wow, so far it's like this movie's sort of kind of grabbing me, and I'm like going, maybe this is going to be one of those movies that we've talked about here. Going, why did it get such bad reviews? Because so far I'm into it, and then I stuck around. So
okay, all right.
Do you think that goes to the writing? Because this movie was written by Jack Paglin, who is an up-and-coming writer. But when he wrote this, he sold this movie on his first pitch to Straight Up Productions. And they bought it. And then it was Wally Pfister who contacted Jack, saying that he's on board with this movie.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the writing. I mean, to approve, again, I think that whoever approved this and said the concept, and I can understand why Wally Pfister or even Spielberg at one point, I think, may have I mean, Christopher Nolan. It was Christopher Nolan.
You can feel the attraction to the script because of the idea and how broad it is and how much potential we said it does have.
Right.
Like you can see why someone would be drawn to work on it.
Absolutely. And Christopher Nolan, I apologize, it wasn't Steven Spielberg. It was Christopher Nolan who said, wow, he could have made this.
He's an exec producer.
And, but I just think that if you are Christopher Nolan, and to me, I find him to be a very gifted storyteller and screenplay writer, he should have known. And somebody whoever greenlighted this, you just say, hey, this is a great concept, but we got to work out these bugs to make this great. And we can transcend science. We can really bring a great science fiction movie to the table.
Well, let me ask you this, because now let's just take the plot holes that didn't work for you or didn't work for anybody. Let's just take them aside for a second. Let's look at just the story in itself. I mean, the themes that, Phil, you were talking earlier about the themes. Where did it fall down in terms of its story points for you?
Where did it fall down?
Yeah, I'm not talking about the plot holes about how did the army not know that this place was being built up. That's.
I think towards the part when they isolate themselves in the town,
right,
and kind of bring
town, whatever.
Yeah, and events kind of go down. Then it's like, because initially everyone's motives were kind of clear.
Yeah.
and they didn't bring in outside characters into the problem and have the pre-existing characters kind of deal with the problem. It's just everyone's motives seem to shift or beliefs about it, you know. And I get that's kind of might be true to life where people's opinions about something can change. But that's where I had the problem with.
I think for me, it was when they brought in the trying to explain the nanotechnology. And for me, I'm not really well versed in that type of science, and I think a lot of people really aren't. And so for me, because I don't have that full understanding of it, I kind of got out of it, and because I don't know what they're really trying to explain here.
Interesting.
I was glad they took out the G.I. Joe lime green nanotechnology. Anyone see G.I. Joe with the nanites? I liked their visual depiction of the nano. For me, going back to John's question, though, it's really hard to try and figure out what is disappointed outside of the plot holes, because I had just so many questions.
Okay, so when the plot is, it just derails it like crazy for you.
And sometimes, sometimes you think something is a plot hole and then they bring in an answer like scenes later.
Yeah.
And I found myself just
hoping.
waiting for something to be answered. And it was distracting, and that's why I wasn't invested in the movie, because I didn't believe it. And I felt that was also, it affected their characters. It affected their characters' relationships, because they were telling you to believe that these people were friends and allies and lovers and all of this, but I wasn't seeing the interaction. I wasn't seeing why they weren't trying to find their friend who was supposedly kidnapped by terrorists.
I think that was one of the big challenges I had, that they went 2 years later. I understood why they did that, because they had to have the place all built up and everything, but you missed all the stuff that would transpire, because here's a wife who's lost her husband.
And she's not talking to anyone else, and no one's reaching out to her.
And never asking. She's a scientist too, so she's never asking the question, how much of this is you? Is it really you in there? And how, and I thought that was very strange. And for 2 years, no questions.
And a well-known bioengineer is kidnapped, and nobody's
no one
looking
cares.
for him.
Yeah.
Like, well, what the hell happened there?
And it's not even
that
just
stuff.
It's
Like,
not even just fame. It's they're supposed to have relationships with each other.
Yeah. And they wouldn't realize that the guy, he hasn't showed up to a dinner party in 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so aside from that, for me, it became sort of kind of, there came a point where I was like, Jesus, I mean, they're recycling Star Trek Next Generation scripts. I mean, basically we've got this artificial intelligence who's made Borg. Basically, he's and they're a hive collective, and how are we going to combat this? Oh, we're going to come up with the idea of we're going to infect them with a virus, and I'm like going, okay, that is a Star Trek Next Generation plot that I've seen done better in Star Trek The Next Generation. Like, they could have had things led up, and I wasn't already bothered by so many things. Things like that might not have stuck out. They might have come off as being more original, but instead I just got hackneyed plots to something that there's nothing really original going on here. So that bothered me.
I think part of the disappointment is that in what Dimitri said, is that if you're going to, like, we all know plots get reused over and over and over again. The reason we allow that is because you hope it's a new perspective. You hope they do it better. You hope you do it from a different angle, all these things.
Or you do it from a character that we haven't seen before.
Right.
There's variations. Like, so this isn't to say, Transcendence is a horror movie because they used AI in this
No.
It's they did that, and then they took someone else's plot and they didn't do it justice. They didn't do it that well. So then you're like just disappointed even more.
Yeah, and they even wanted to do that in like Terminator and Terminator 2 and how do we bring down this AI that became self-aware and wanted to wipe out humanity. And and plus I never really got the sense with Johnny Depp's character. He wasn't necessarily like evil. Like, I didn't want to see, like, he wasn't, I want to take over the world. Like, he actually did seem to be helping people, but he was evil. I thought the terrorists were more evil. Like, the terrorists, and there was a line in the movie that said, you're killing people to get your point across, but you're supposed to be for, the humanity, but it's okay for you to kill. And it took the sympathy away from the terrorist standpoint. And I was like, well, Johnny Depp can cure cancer. He can make a blind man see. These people do it willingly.
Except for the fact that he's linked.
He's
into them.
implanted
I think that was the
them.
part
I
where it started to
understand.
get
Yes.
scary.
Connected
Yeah.
to him.
The harder part for me with that was that, like, I thought the actors of the terrorist group did really well. I thought that they were fierce, and they did seem to have this, very big issue that they were going to do anything to stop. Johnny Depp's character, on the other hand, what I found confusing was his emotional, like, detachment. Like, if the truth was that in the end that he was really Will and they had succeeded and this really could have been, the future of the planet that they then unplugged, why didn't we see the love?
That was
there
the
was
thing
charisma in
that's
the
where-
first act that got dropped, and it was like, okay, they made the choice to make him more of a digital voice, so maybe it was something we just didn't find in the inflection, but it didn't. They gave him all the characteristics of being human, but they changed him. So why should she have believed it was him? Like, that didn't make sense.
That was the part that
and,
really did not work for me. Is that
yeah,
keeping
his
that love story going? Yeah, because
his emotional level was so flat. It made him feel like
and
a
why,
robot.
and why and
well-
for 2 years she'd stick around and never question that.
Yeah.
If
But-
he was like that the entire time, those 2 years, and you never questioned until then, I just have a hard time believing a scientist wouldn't question.
And this is
Yeah,
the person
I can
who
understand.
made a garden. Like,
But to go off of the emotional level of Johnny Depp's character, I felt like at the beginning when he was actually human, he was a very stoic man. It was hard to convey any emotions from him, and I felt it was his wife that kind of showed him that he is capable of emotion. But
Agreed.
him, as I think it was from just the acting and how he portrayed the character, I didn't see a lot of emotion from Will because he's such an intellectual being that he was more he focused more on the brain and neurological science rather than human emotions.
Yeah.
And I think that's where his character went through. And I think it kind of translated to the end with his character showing no emotions again. So I felt that was actually kind of consistent.
He definitely wasn't a people person. I mean, he didn't want to do this lecture. He didn't want to do the dog and pony show. He never felt comfortable with being around people. He wanted to shield himself, hence the
but
copper.
I think what she's talking to is that between the two of them, they had a great relationship, and that it's missing from the second half of the movie.
Yeah.
and it's missing
From the
from
second
when
act
he's
on.
an image on the computer.
Yeah.
It's missing from when he comes back into a human type form.
Yeah, and that's not to
she
discount Marissa's. No, you're
yeah.
absolutely right. It's not
He's
like
very
he's overly emotional, but
Right.
their
there's
relationship
a
was sound.
disconnect that they were this love. They were each other's partners.
Yeah.
They knew everything about each other, and then all of a sudden, at the very end, you also have him with everything blowing up, and he won't take her inside because she didn't believe him.
Yeah, why
Like,
she lost faith then?
But like that just doesn't. If it was really Will, if it was really his mind,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, a person would not do that.
And again, you had the Paul Bettany character screaming that from the beginning, going, "What if you miss something? Like that's not him. Can't you?" And he kept on saying, "It's like he would have never wanted to take over the world. He would have never wanted to do
But-
any of that." And still,
But
people
he
didn't
would've-
listen.
But he would have wanted to do it for her, which is I think the point they were trying to make. Because that's the world she wanted to live.
Well, there's also
But I think that's its downfall because, like you said, is it him? Is it not him? And that's the question the audiences go: Is it? Is
There's
it a
not-
bad AI or is it a good AI? We
there's
don't know.
not enough hints in the
Right.
second act to give the ending justice.
That's right, and
there's not enough. There's not enough.
And I think that's the missed opportunity between he and her, right? Between that relationship, because
Yes.
then if you could see that, and you could see she could be asking all those questions. So the same questions the audience asked, she could be asking. So we could be following that journey and just leading us right, because you want that.
Because-
Supposedly, this love is going to transcend all this AI stuff.
And you're supposed to go from
this love is gonna
Paul's
transcend
team
death.
to her team.
Right.
Like that's what the shift should be. Your shift, if they're trying to make it sound like in the end this could have been such a good solution,
Right.
then you need to be on Paul, who plays Max's side, and be like, oh, this is a danger, this is a danger. And then by the end, she needs to win you over, and she needs to be like, no, this was Will,
Right.
and you need to see why
yeah,
she
it
was
was Will
right.
all along, and you were wrong. Yeah, exactly.
And that doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't happen.
No.
So,
And again, I'll just
It's a good
reference
idea,
back.
though.
it's a great
Yeah,
idea.
no, it's a great idea, but this is where, again, when we talked about her, you buy the relationship. You buy it in the universe that it's in. You understand why some people don't buy it. And I remember when I talked about her, I looked at her as more as a scary tale of what could happen in the future. And I was hoping to be able to see Transcendence and sort of kind of see, this is all that can go wrong, but it just didn't deliver. It didn't have. You're right. It didn't have the emotional connection at all, and you can't do that. You can't make. Good science fiction should always be about the human condition, which this didn't really showcase.
The part it did showcase is that how we're afraid of what we don't understand. They did a good job of that.
And I think that most of that relied on like the actors outside. Max, Morgan Freeman always has like some easygoing nature to him. The terrorist group, all of them felt very like their humanity was at stake, very emotionally connected, and I believed all of their scenarios.
But that's had some sort of prescience about what the only way this could go is wrong.
Yeah.
And
that was
I
another
humanity,
problem.
I think that the human level and that was the theme going throughout this movie was the idea of self-awareness, because they always throw that out there. Well, how do you explain self-awareness? And we can see in the actual humans who haven't been affected yet by this technology, they are self-aware when the machine's taking over, and that's where the separation between humans and what's evolving, what's transcending, and so that's what keeps them the humans on top.
Sure. Well, the other thing that was interesting is human condition is that if you believe in evolution, what is the next step?
Right.
I thought that was fascinating.
Well, listen, Paul Bettany's character as Max, even in his opening statement during his lecture, he talked about the benefits of this, and even Johnny Depp. But Paul Bettany was like, we can cure Alzheimer's and we can cure cancer, and to me, if there is a technology that is able to help us fight disease and things like that, I'm all for it. I didn't see what, in the way it was presented, I didn't see what the downside is. Like, why would there be, again, a terrorist faction, like to make it because they don't want technology ruling the day? But they weren't talking about that. They were talking about technology being good enough and smart enough that we can make Earth, we can make humanity healthier and better. And we can use the technology to serve.
Did I miss it? Because I didn't think they made a very good argument for the terrorist side. Did I miss it?
It was in the beginning, but
that they just because I guess the argument that you're playing God and we don't want you to play God, which I thought was just a bad argument. They didn't really have anything backing that up except one crazy guy that shot everybody. So was that their argument, that they didn't want anybody?
I think that goes also back to self-awareness, because we saw Kate Mara's character. There was that moment where she realized that turning point, that technology can be big and can be dangerous if used wrong in the world. And I think that was her way of her reasoning behind why she's part of RIFT. And because RIFT stands for Revolution and Independence from
Sure, no,
technology.
I get that part, but I understand the argument that any technology, depending on how it's used, can be good or bad.
Yes.
But
Sure.
is that it? Is that the argument?
That was it.
So AI but in their minds, it's you can't even examine it scientifically because it's just too dangerous. Is that the argument?
I think it was the reasoning to stop technology before it gets ahead of itself. Yeah.
Well,
but yet they had to rely on some semblance,
barn, man.
And they had to rely on some semblance of technology to mastermind whatever they did. That was the other thing. I mean,
I thought the irony in that they were using technology to take down technology.
And again, how the government couldn't see this big base being built, yet this little podunk terrorist cell up in the mountains. Oh, something big is going on. Over here, I'm like, really? How did they find it and you schmucks didn't?
Or on the other hand, how does the artificial intelligence that has satellites that can look all over the world not see all these other things going on, like them building tunnels, or the copper, or like where she's going?
Well, we didn't say it was super highly intelligent. It's just artificial intelligence.
He didn't have enough power. I think
it wasn't in Mensa.
Maybe
he
needed
needed more power to do these
things. To
control
the
of all these things. Yeah,
of course. What was I thinking? Google Earth doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, and that to me is a huge problem with the movie, because once you start to see one or two holes, as I think Dimitri and I think you were saying as well, that you start to see all of
Once you
them,
pull
and
that
you go,
thread, you can't stop. And
Ouch.
again, it was another reason why it made me angry is because I appreciate Wally Pfister's work. And I'm like going, it makes sense for him to be a director. And seeing the trailers leading up to this, I was like, okay, I'm in. Like, this is something that, I like this stuff. I'm geeky and nerdy enough. I like this kind of science fiction. And it could give us a healthy discussion. It could be like, is technology too bad? Like, and then it just didn't turn out that way. And for me, that makes me angry because when you have potential, and when the potential is just left to hang on the vine, it just that
very
angers
disappointing.
me. It is. It's very disappointing.
And part of that is because there is so much potential, and the reason we can find so many plot holes is with the expansion of what they're trying to say I can do, like covering all of that, and creating a film around something that has the ultimate intelligence and the ultimate power and all of the eyes in the sky, and like to capture that in a film that's 2 hours, like that's really difficult.
And it's also a little disappointing because as soon as he reaches awareness and is connected with Penn, again, I'm going, you're the wife and you're the scientist. You don't ever go, what are you experiencing? What's it like? Not one question about that.
Not one
You're a
question.
scientist for crying out loud. The person you love is out there experiencing something you've never, and probably will never, and you never ask a question. You never say one thing about it.
Great point. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Because I'm going, I'm going, wait a minute. He's out there. And he says, is anybody listening? Yeah, I'm listening. Tell me what's going on. What are you experiencing?
And I think it was just because when we see Evelyn finally have that first communication with her husband, that you already saw immediately she got emotionally attached.
Immediately.
And she, right then and there, she's like, I have my husband back. She kind of got blindsided and tunnel visioned, and therefore those questions kind of got out of the minute because it was just she had the love of her life still living.
And again, she
but
she
I can
throws
understand
Paul
that.
Bettany's
I can understand that
character
for an
out.
hour.
I can too, but again, you have Paul Bettany,
she
like
gets
that was his best friend,
Right.
and you figured him being the scientist, he'd be like, he was automatically like, instead of asking questions,
Right.
he said
He's
shut it down,
banished.
or she
And
get out.
That's
and I'm like, that makes no sense that you would do
Yeah,
that.
Exactly.
Like, it makes no sense.
I can kind of, I understand
Her
that she might
emotional
want to do that
connection.
because she's afraid that he's going to turn him off and then he'll know. I understand her wanting to do that. I don't understand him walking and saying, you know what, that's it, I'm leaving. I just don't
The only way I
understand
could
that.
convince myself to understand that comes in the third act, at the very end, or I guess maybe not quite the end, where they're talking about his papers and his fears, and I'm like, I mean, maybe this is like his worst fear come to reality, and he recognized it because it was like a nightmare, and so he was able to turn it off.
He had the omnipotence to say, let it go, because let it reach its course for enough people to get upset about it, and then we can change it, because that's what he says with Kate Mara. Says, more people have to be upset about it before we can do something about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
huge case of
I think the
Stockholm
walking out
syndrome.
scene was just a build up for him to come back to help fix it.
Terrible. They should have had the argument right there about why he can't.
But if
And
we
they
had the
didn't.
argument, we wouldn't have a movie.
Well, no, but you do.
No,
you have the argument,
yeah,
and then you still have her, like you said, saying, "I don't care the arguments because I want him."
Right.
And you could still have the movie, but you don't just walk away.
You needed a watchdog. You needed the counterbalance again, because the counterbalance would have made it more. It would have been more humanistic.
And it would have been a better conflict for Paul Bettany's character, because he knows he shouldn't have walked away.
Sure.
And
he did.
And he did anyway. And then now he goes, I shouldn't have walked away, but I'm not going to do what you want me to do, Rift, because then I'm killing him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been way more interesting and dramatic.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh, okay, I can't believe you said that. I'm going to go have a drink.
Yeah.
And then get captured by the
Yeah.
Rift group.
It just was like,
For 2 years.
That just fell down for me.
Yeah.
Well, we talked a little bit about the technology theme, the AI theme, and how that's delivered. But as Phil mentioned, there's a ton of other themes also.
Yes. let's get
And I
into
don't
some of those.
know where we want to go next, because
Phil,
there's
did
some
you have a
touchy
particular
ones.
theme that you wanted to discuss, and you had mentioned it?
I guess you guys can talk about kind of, God. this is kind of
The religious component.
the religious component, because at the end, they tied it back to plants and flowers, and there's that symbiosis of technology feeding and whatever else.
And we're all part of each other,
Which-
and
And
which
we
is
create our own
actually
gods,
interesting
and
because
they go through like kind of the miracles of Jesus.
Circle of life.
Which is actually interesting because the writer Jack, he is actually self-proclaimed agnostic, and then so he said this film he wanted to touch upon the technological miracles and how to visually, and explain that to people.
and those miracles in other days and
Yeah, delve into that.
earlier times would be considered miracles and godlike.
Well, and again, when you have that omnipotence that the character had, again, that is a tried and true plot point for some science fiction. Again, I got to throw in the classic Star Trek had that when one of the crew members gets godlike powers and he decides he wants to be a god, and in a sense, Johnny Depp here sort of wants to. He's playing God, and what was the question that was asked Johnny Depp?
Are you trying to be your own god?
Right.
I think is what it is.
And he said
Yeah.
that,
Isn't that what we always do?
Yeah, isn't that what we always do?
So, I mean, to me, this theme was very interesting, and I guess maybe I was reading far too into it, but I thought that this theme was scattered all throughout the film and on multiple characters. And for me, Johnny Depp was very much representative of a Jesus-like figure. They had him curing the blind, curing the crippled to a rock, rising back
Rising
from the
chair,
dead.
absolutely.
And then on top of that, you have like his friend Max, who to me was kind of more of like the disciple that doubts, and he's the one wearing the cross the whole film, and then comes back in the end when it's past the point, when it's too late to like come back, and in a way he realizes he's done wrong. And so to me, I was just like, there's so much religion everywhere.
Which is
Not
which is fine,
Yeah, it's
and
great.
again, if this were a better movie, like this, I think we'd have so much more fun talking about these religious aspects, because again, it makes for a healthy, fun discussion. I'm not saying that we're not having that here, but we're having it on a different level. Like Marissa, the first time I did a podcast with you, when you brought religious up when we did Pacific Rim, I was like, whoa, okay, that's what a fantastic way you brought that into the conversation, and it really brought to fruition. Like we went down a different tangent that we didn't see before, and we like here as a group too, like symbolism, and we'll point on these things, and we could talk about how great it was, or it was cool that we can find that out. But in this movie, unfortunately, we're taking a different tack. It's all over, like thematically, it's there, religious, it's there.
And
all
also-
amazing things
yeah.
just lost.
That's great. And also, I think this movie showed the importance of organic living organisms.
Yeah.
Because we see how this nanotechnology is affecting the environment, how it's changing water molecules and whatnot, and it's affecting everything. It's in the air. And they showed if we take away that technology that has been built, the earth can heal itself and build trees and put oxygen back into the air. The waters we can drink again straight from the rivers, and so I thought that was interesting because
Well, that's the potential
that's
of
how
technology.
that's how we started with the world, and now technology is physically changing the environment and biologically, chemically changing the environment. Take that out, and then we can go back to our normal ways
or
of
use it
living.
again. I think
Yeah.
it goes back to you can use technology for good or bad. So you can say technology caused the pollution in the air, but really it was humans that did it.
And
It's humans, but
Yeah.
the importance
with the use of technology, but you can also
Yeah.
say that technology does amazing things too, and they've. And
but the
absolutely.
importance of not everything has to be technology.
No.
We need the organic living organisms.
And speaking of technology, again, was I the only person who was thinking of utilizing technology in the movie? Like, all they needed was one good EMP to wipe everything out. An electromagnetic pulse would have taken care of
I
our entire
absolutely-
problem.
In,
And
the
I'm-
middle of it, I was going, why are they not? I mean, because they did such a decent job in the beginning of talking about
Yeah.
all this amazing technology. And I go, nobody even said EMP, really?
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's one of the things
Yeah.
we worry about the most.
Right.
I liked it interesting how they actually
Nobody, nothing.
executed the virus, because I see in a lot of films or TV shows when they say we have to build a virus to destroy whatever is going on. I thought and envisioned in my head that it was going to be coding, computer type of virus that's going to be set out.
Oh,
with all
like
the
in
technology.
Independence Day?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That type of coding virus.
Yeah.
But
Or
the way that they
Terminator.
portrayed it in this film, it went back to biology.
I really like that.
And it had to be the human connection to take down technology. I thought that was fascinating.
And then fusion with her blood. And
Yes. Back into the bloodstream to wipe out technology,
Right.
rather than from a computer to another computer, taking everything
And then,
out.
but by the time they got to that, when Johnny says, well, I can either upload the virus or I can save her. I only got
Or
enough
save
power.
him. Yeah.
Save him by doing it. But, I thought he was also saying to save her. I think he said save her.
it was more like if I die,
Yeah.
if I die,
Right.
But
She
the
got
point,
you, right,
the
right,
point I'm
right.
making is, by the time they got to that, I went, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just don't care.
Yeah.
you weren't too worried about her sacrifice.
No, because there was no sacrifice. He knew. Here's the thing: there's no sacrifice for Johnny Depp. He knows. Look, you're gonna transcend this like I did, because the awareness he has now is you'll transcend death. So what's the sacrifice? He knows that they're gonna end up together in the garden with the sunflowers and the water, and he knows all that. So what's the sacrifice?
Right.
There is none.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't know that there was going to be a mysterious pond of droplet water,
Well,
like
see,
what was it, a copper shuttle or something in the
that's what-
garden.
and I disagree with that. I think he does. I think his awareness of all the stuff he knows now, and the way he knew that, okay, this is going to take care of that, and this is going to take care of this.
Right.
He knows.
Yeah.
He know. I mean, the fact that he knows all this stuff that he's doing is going to help the water, bring the forest back. He knows that it's all not wasted, that it goes somewhere.
So they exist together in
They
this little
exist
pool
in
of
some.
water.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that awareness that he has, whether it's some sort of intelligence, so whatever he is aware of from his position as an AI amazing guy, he knows that that this existence which we hold on to of being human is temporary anyway, and you whatever makes you up will go on.
Okay.
That's what I think he's aware of that. I don't think there is any big, huge dilemma for him.
Yeah.
'Cause I honestly think he goes, look, I'm doing these great things here, and
Right.
you really want me to upload this virus?
Yeah.
And because you can't he can't die because of what we've done.
Right.
And he goes,
Oh, fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just affecting all of you.
yeah, it's all right if you're not ready for it. And that for me is the message: is we're not ready for the technology because we haven't evolved as much as technology has.
No.
Let's face it. I mean, we when has it ever happened where we've evolved beyond the technology? No, the
Right.
technology always evolves beyond us.
Yeah.
Always has.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to use a sword except to kill. I mean,
Nah, I can't argue that point. I mean, and that again, it makes it tough on this movie because there are other aspects. We have talked about thematically, we like the themes, and I like the themes in other science fiction genres, and I think tech specs. I think the tech credits. I think special effects, and there were certain. I thought there was some really cool special effects being done in this movie, and
The
so-
VFX supervisor, Nathan McGuinness, who's known for Rush and Fast and Furious 6, X-Men, Les Mis. He's done some big movies.
And the movie, look, the money was up on screen. I'm not gonna,
Sure.
I can't
Absolutely,
take that
yeah.
away from them. I just wish, again, I couldn't help but, again, your point about the virus is great, but again, I just couldn't help but think they had a choice in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Do we wipe out the Borg by injecting a virus, or what if we inject humanity into them? So they put
So they
a
become-
Borg who they make have emotion, and they put them into a little Borg sack, and since they're all connected, they
start
catch us,
to-
and they become individuals. And I'm like going, that was far more interesting than what's happening here, and that was a television show. And like they're trying to do this thing, and
well, and for me, it just died so horribly at that point when you want she's on her deathbed and you want him to have this big huge struggle, and it's like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? But in order to save humanity, you have to die. And you want it to be this huge thing, but our love is going to transcend all this anyway.
The sacrifice
And it's
really
just not
should have
there.
meant something.
It's just
more.
not there, but mainly for the reasons we've already talked about,
Yeah.
which is you don't get to see that.
Yeah.
It's like their relationship stopped, and then, oh, by the way, look, there's a hand in this thing. I'm making a hand. Look at, oh my God! And then she freaks out.
Now, at that moment when they were building the hand, you knew that Will Castor was going to come back in a
Right.
human
I
form.
was
Absolutely.
waiting for that
You
so
know-
much
Yeah,
earlier.
But I knew that.
Exactly.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I was just
I knew that was
waiting and
coming.
waiting. I was like,
Yeah.
after
As soon as he
they,
dies, I go, well, he'll find a way back. I
no,
mean,
as
Yeah,
soon
of
as
course.
he healed the first guy.
oh yeah, yeah.
You're
Well,
like,
I'm just saying is,
okay, or he and he makes a speech about
yeah,
and then
nanotechnology.
it's
As soon as that
rub
word
your
came out, I
feet
go, okay,
flesh.
great. When do we
You're
see
like,
him? Right. And the fact, and
just
here's the thing
waiting.
that's another thing that really bothered me. Again, you're a scientist. Not once did you oh, nanotechnology, look what my husband did.
Right.
You never went, oh my God, that's the beginning of you coming. You never, what? Seriously? Come on.
we all did exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the
Yeah.
audience is like, okay, so he's
And,
here.
Well,
and,
actually-
and then you see the hand and you freaked by it?
I am going to say that a gentleman who was sitting next to me when Johnny Depp showed up at the physical Dr. Castor, he was with his wife. He goes, "Ooh, that's scary." It's like, okay,
But it just made her seem so silly because she was so bright in the beginning, and then I just think they just fall down on the
I'm not
job
so sure.
writing her.
Silly. I think it just shows how emotionally involved and attached she got to the project that she wasn't really thinking clearly. It,
But here's the
it
thing.
muddled her.
But it's 2
thoughts.
years.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's 2
it's 2
years, and
years.
none of these questions. You're a scientist, and they made her out to be a very smart scientist who's able to help him figure out the whole AI thing.
Who's able
And not once in 2 years are these things popping up in your head. It takes that. I go, that's why I think that's ridiculous. That no scientist, the way you painted her in the first act, is gonna be freaked out or not realize that nanotechnology could be your husband coming back to actual life. He's got his genetic code.
No,
he
that's
can do
true.
all these other things, and
He has
you
a
don't.
conscience.
It doesn't pop into your head at all that he might be able to.
Well, I'm gonna
Hell,
pop.
we got 3-dimensional printing that now
Yeah, I
can
know.
make human organs.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna throw this question out there. That's pretty much it's on topic with what we're talking. All right, so we know that there are plot holes within the script.
Yeah.
Wally Pfister, acclaimed cinematographer, we said. How did we think he did directing wise? I mean, personally, for the material that he had, I thought he did a good job. I think he just got the short end of the stick of being this is the script that he had to direct. But I think he did a decent job going from cinematography to this.
Well, I don't. I'm trying to think. Would it have turned out differently in a more seasoned director or whatever? I don't know that it would. I mean, I didn't have any issues actually with the directing. I thought it was fine. I don't really
I
have
thought
anything to say about
The
it.
the writing, of course, we're all questioning the writing right now because this film was actually on the 2012 blacklist, and it had 7 votes. And to get that recognition already before it comes out makes me think, what state was this script in when they first pitched it? Was it fully completed, or was it just a standard pitch?
Here's why, because Christopher Nolan's so tied into with him, obviously. And if you look at a Christopher Nolan movie, even movies like Batman, they're very much passion projects for Chris. And whereas I look at a movie like Transcendence, it was kind of handed to him, and he didn't have that initial thing. And sometimes Christopher Nolan doesn't necessarily have to write every movie, but he has a hand in the story and the shaping of it. And I didn't feel that as much in this one. I don't think that's his fault, but it was just kind of more presented to him, and he just kind of took off from there.
And on top of that, I think that we talked about like the writing and how there needed kind of to be some things filled out or some more suggestions of their relationship. I think that also could have been done by nonverbal cues. And I think that kind of goes back to the directing. I think that there were just some moments missing where we were getting the tied in human emotion. And so I don't really know where to not point. I don't want to like point blame people, but for me that was missing from the vision.
Yeah, I mean, I think, pardon me, like I sort of feel it's almost as if Wally Pfister was given a project where, it was, he bit off more than he can chew. It seemed to be, it obviously the budget was I think around 130 for production budget, or for the budget all in. That's a lot of money you're giving to a first time director for this kind of a story. Now, we've seen other people like Jon Favreau, who was given Iron Man, and Shane Black, who was given like Iron Man 3. These are just the ones that pop in my head. Yeah. For this one, working with Christopher Nolan, I was sort of kind of like, when all was said and done, I was sort of kind of wishing, well, geez, I wish you maybe took a smaller project that maybe Chris might have been a little bit more passionate about, that, and build yourself up to a movie like Transcendence. As a cinematographer, we know he can make a picture look fantastic. He did his best. I thought the movie was paced fine. I wasn't.
Well, a lot of people are having challenges.
Really?
Yeah. The middle was.
Was it plotting? What was the?
Laborious. Yeah, it was just hard. My mind was wandering all over with plot holes and questions, and I wasn't dialed in. And I mean, it's funny to me because the most interesting or most attractive images were going to be your like very up close nature stills. Like I was so much more fascinated by like the portrayal of them, the drops, or like the mountain lake at the end. Like I was like, oh, that's pretty. I was like, this is pretty. Oh, that's a pretty sunflower. I'm like, I definitely should not be walking out of a movie about artificial intelligence being like, oh, the pretty flower.
You know what I found in kind of doing the research about Wally specifically, he started off. There's anytime you transition a cinematographer to a director, they say he tries to tell the story through more shots, whereas directors kind of think more editorially, or so kind of the quote goes. But Wally's specific upbringing, he started off, his father was in the TV news business, and he started off kind of like as a cameraman for news, and then knew that he had wanted to do more dramatic work and things like that. And I find that kind of interesting.
He was a documentarian as well.
Exactly. And, and we're with this, my only thing is he did a great job directing it overall for me, but the cinematography and what it could have been, the scope of it, wasn't as great as his other cinematography. I feel almost like, he tried to accommodate for that in some sort of way, where if I guess the only movie that I can kind of call sci-fi out of his work right now is Inception, and where that was just so well paced and everything, again, that was very near and dear to Christopher Nolan's heart, but you just felt like there was heart in it, and here just kind of everything whittled away. And especially when you could go through technology and the amount of shots that you could have really created something we've never seen, both from a story perspective but a visual perspective. And I think we didn't get either, and that's what suffers.
And also with this film, that because Wally did direct it, he actually had a different DP for this film.
Right.
He used Jess Hall, and who had most recently done Hot Fuzz and Spectacular Now. So, and there was an interview where Wally was saying, yes, it is kind of difficult being a DP himself and handing the same responsibilities to someone else and having them take on that role.
And now when you say that and I think about it, yeah, absolutely. It almost seemed that he didn't give this DP his full reign, because there were many hallway shots or shots that look like they came out of the Dark Knight movie, like when they're showing the big, like, if they were in the weapons room or something, and there was like the long hallway where Bruce Wayne was in, and I was like, wow, that's of course it looks like that, well, and so I just wonder if that guy had that, Wally Pfister still appeared to have put his cinematography stamp on certain scenes. Now, but Wally Pfister is a cinematographer too. He's cut his teeth. He worked for Roger Corman way back. So he worked his way like up among the ranks, and then.
So I didn't get that though. But are you saying it was a bad idea to have his stamp on it in terms of cinematography? Or did it fail
you're going to be a director, and as we're talking, think editorially. Yes, I think that it looked too much like the stuff he did as a cinematographer,
okay.
and he was just lifting his stuff and telling, okay, I just have a feeling that as collaborative as he was, as a director, he may have been saying, yeah, but I'd rather have this kind of lighting, and because he already has that in his head. It would have been interesting to see how the movie would have looked had he decided to take on both roles.
I kind of agree with. I didn't really have a problem with his directing.
I didn't
or
either.
His cinematography. I was fine with it.
Yeah, and because this is technically his first directorial debut, he's not a rookie in the industry. I mean, he's worked with Christopher Nolan. He said in an interview he knows the circus aspect of going to set every single day. It's just his biggest challenge in this film. He mentioned that was directing people's performances rather than the DP or that. It was the acting part that he had to focus more on.
Which is interesting.
It's very interesting, especially like looking at I guess he's like, you have very seasoned actors in this film. Like people who
got a good crew. I mean, they've done some. They've got a pretty good CV.
I mean, I think their resume comes out with quite a few.
But
Yeah,
I want to go back to one more thing that Phil said, which was that fact that we didn't really see anything new or different in terms of the cinematography, especially because we're in the world of AI, and you could have gone anywhere and stuff. I liked it. It was still. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was. But that I hadn't even thought about that aspect of it, because it did sound kind of look. Oh well, it's a little. This is the wrong word, but derivative. I mean, we've seen it before.
Yeah,
and I thought that was interesting.
I think it was the port. I personally loved the close-ups of the sunflower and the water droplets, and just nature in itself, the beauty of that, and then being influenced by technology. The shots, the close-ups, shows the importance of having this in our world. And I got that message out of it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Beautiful.
All right, so we've talked a little bit cinematography and direction. Let's go to acting.
I mean, I think I touched on it a little earlier. I think that I thought the supporting cast was very good.
Strong.
Very strong, very invested. I believed all their situations. For me, I think that there was a really strong choice made by Johnny Depp or made by someone, director, about advisement of keep that stoicness, keep people guessing. And for me, that didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't work for me,
it was.
I would have much rather have going back and forth, going, is he not, is he not, and I didn't really feel that, and mostly because she was so one-sided, and she wasn't. It's like.
Yeah.
So, and I think those were choices, and I think that the character work for their relationship was just off for me. He was too stoic, and she was too, I guess, overly emotional. She didn't question, and I didn't like those choices. And although you did, for me, I read fear on her face as soon as we got into the facility, even when she was giving the initial tour, which to me was strange. Like, you get the awkward, elevator ride down, and she's like, oh, yeah, and blah, blah, blah. Great. But, you just saw her not feeling confident in any of this yet. And for me, those were strange acting choices.
And for me, for Johnny, because we've seen his whole repertoire of all of his films, that he loves to play those over-the-top characters that we can remember, the Mad Hatter, Edward Scissorhands, so many movies. I mean, I won't go into all of them. So I expected more out of Johnny, a bigger type of performance that was really out there. But I think his character being a artificial intelligence that emotionally limits him, and I find acting, I like acting performances when I can connect to them, and I couldn't connect to Johnny.
And he has a thankless job. I mean, let's face it, he's AI, first of all, and then he's two-dimensional, literally two-dimensional, so you have a hard time.
There was already a emotional boundary on him that he couldn't transcend.
It's a tough job.
I guess you can say.
I was wondering how long he was on set for. Because basically he has an overvoice.
Yeah. Actually, he was on set for a lot of it because the actress who plays his wife, Evelyn, and she says during all those filmings, how are you going to get that? Rebecca Hall. She said when she was talking to Johnny's character on screen that they actually built 2 adjacent rooms where she'd be in one room with the screen of Johnny that was live streamed to her, and Johnny would be in the next room.
Which is very similar to how they did her.
Yeah,
exactly.
So there was actual live stream, real-time acting with each other so they can play off of each other during dialogue scenes.
So he was in France, Skyping.
But they were.
So,
Rebecca said that most of her scenes she actually was filming with Johnny.
Yeah. Well, that's
Right.
interesting. And
Well,
again,
that's
as far as the performances go, there wasn't any one performance that I can point to that say, ugh, that's, he sucked. And, I get your point, and I understand how emotionless Johnny Depp was, but it didn't, I can't point to any bit of the act, except, again, I guess for me, Kate Mara's character was a little bit.
that's the only one I had challenges with.
Like-
I thought everybody did what the best they could with
did-
what they got. But
right.
there was something, I think, and I used the word gravitas, that was missing from that character. So
Yeah.
I just didn't buy that.
I didn't follow her as a villain.
Yeah, I mean,
Probably because you weren't scared of her.
Well, there's
Yeah.
that, and I just didn't buy that she didn't have a leadership quality that I thought everybody was going to. Oh, okay,
Right.
she's the leader of the rebels.
Yeah. And-
Whatever. I just didn't. I didn't see it.
She was no Sarah Connor.
no, and also Morgan Freeman. I mean, he was also in this movie. I felt he was definitely underutilized because he's a great actor, and he plays Joseph Taggart, who was more of a father figure mentor
Right.
to Will, and they hardly
Well,
used
he
him.
disappears in the movie as
Yeah.
well,
He-
for 2 years.
Exactly.
Or something, yeah.
So just having all these big names, I don't think they utilized them.
No.
After their friend died, they just tragically decide, okay, we can't be friends anymore.
Right.
Everyone go your own way.
Yeah.
Well, also Evelyn kind of self-exiled herself from everybody too,
True.
so that's the reason why we still had that. We didn't have the connection with her friends.
But don't worry, when she comes back, she has like millions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Billions
Yes,
of dollars. And,
billions.
Yeah. And nobody questioned that either.
Yeah. That was. Yeah.
We're
Well, that was the
not
whole
money
thing.
There
was
was some trading. It all happened in one night.
Yeah.
Didn't you
And
guys
then,
hear?
that's it. You don't follow up on that.
Yeah, and
That
that's
was-
not in any kind of publication.
Yeah.
How this scientist just made billions of dollars. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
But they know it.
And they can't find her in the desert, even though there are these big solar panels that came out of nowhere.
Yeah. And it.
They were ordered online.
That, of course, Amazon, and they were delivered by drones.
Yes. It took 2 years to find.
But
You can't find Area 50. No.
I did overall enjoy the cast because a lot of
I like Paul
these
Bettany.
actors, Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany was.
A lot of these
nice.
actors have worked together on previous films. So
Sure.
mostly, Christopher Nolan's films, Cillian Murphy and Morgan Freeman, they were in the Batman franchise. And then Paul Bettany and Johnny are old-time friends.
Yeah.
And then, so all of them had the familiarity with each other. And even director Wally has worked with all of them on
Right.
some different level.
Yeah.
So he kind of brought his family to work on his first passion project film.
I think that Paul is. I mean, I think if anybody, I think Paul. I liked his performance the best. I
Me
thought he was
too.
the most conflicting and difficult. Although I think Rebecca did again, given the other issues that I have with it, I thought she did a good job.
Yeah.
She helps anchor the whole movie, but unfortunately for me, the missing pieces they're not her fault. But I think what she was able to do and bring to it was certainly
Sure.
helpful.
But it's funny though. I was more sympathetic with the Paul Bettany character. Like he
Yeah.
was the one that I said, well, "Why isn't anybody listening to this guy?"
Yeah, I too.
And then
and-
why isn't anybody looking for him? Because he's the smartest apple in this group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
And because you cared about him.
you did.
Yeah, I think he was the most rational
Yeah,
out of everyone,
yeah.
which questions why no one was.
And as a scientist, he was the only scientist that was questioning
Asking the question,
anything.
exactly. That's
He was the
driving
only
me
one.
crazy.
But he was the voice of the audience.
And it's like, oh, we have a scientist that questions. We got to
lock
get him
him
out
up.
of the. Yeah, we
Yeah,
got to
let's
get
get
him
rid
out
of
of the
him.
story.
Yeah.
No questions. Let's kidnap him. And then he Stockholm syndrome. But yeah, Patty Hearst syndrome.
How
Yeah,
did they
whatever, yeah.
turn you?
How did they turn you? Well, they sort of kind of made sense.
Yeah.
They
much.
made sense.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what to tell. I don't even know how to go from there.
Well,
Music.
what we can talk about, what is fascinating about this movie from a directing process, from a filmmaking process. We're talking about technology. Today, technology has taken our filmmaking, and it's pretty much all digital. There are only a few holdouts there. Christopher Nolan being one of them, Steven Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, and Wally Pfister. And what's interesting about this movie that I found out afterwards was he actually filmed this on 35.
35 millimeter anamorphic.
Yeah, and which is pretty amazing, in its own thing. But they also usually in today's world, if you are still using film, you can instill some way, in one way, shape, or form, you will use computers or technology for color timing. I mean, we do a lot of that at Technicolor. We'll do, adding color, taking color away, photo finishing, all that fun stuff. But he chose to go with a photochemical finish, which is the old school way of
Spielberg and Krasinski.
right of it, but it's a very old school way of making film, and I found that aspect interesting considering what the movie had to say about technology. And when you talk about 95%, it still had to be converted to digital. Okay, so there wasn't. I don't know how many film prints Warner Brothers made of Transcendence. I'm gonna say close to zero, because 95% of this country's theaters are all digital by now. And if you're not digital, then there's a ton of movies you're not getting. So, and still that he still had to it was still delivered via hard drive or it could have been satellite in some locations. But, I just find it's like vinyl, compact disc, or iTunes. It's like what, and here we have 35 millimeter, and I don't want to use digital. Yet somebody like a Joss Whedon has like completely embraced digital. I find it endearing. But they went on to say that they saved $300,000 by using this photochemical finish, which I'm like, there's only one lab in Hollywood. It's Photochem. I just gave them a plug, but they're like the only lab. Technicolor, which I work at, we shut down our film print labs almost a year ago. Deluxe has just shut down their film printing labs. So it's a daunting task, I think, in today's day and age, that you're going to, that you're still choosing 35 for your reasons. But I don't see how it saved the money. It's so expensive even to ship prints. But,
I don't know.
But look, I saw the movie
it's a little bit
honestly,
tricky.
it doesn't matter to me a whit as a viewer. I don't notice the difference.
Well, I saw the movie now, and you know what? That's the thing. You know what you're not noticing in digital is you're not noticing the real change dots. You know what I'm talking about, right?
The real, sure.
The real change dots. You're not seeing any of that. No blemishes. That changes, and that's fine. That's fine by me. I saw this in the Cinemark XD. I didn't even know that it was when I got my ticket. They're like, "Oh, you're in the XD house." I said, "Oh, great. I just saw Captain America there and awesome 3D. I'll be curious to see what a 2D movie is going to look like." And it did look great. Like all those shots you were talking about, the sunflower, the water, all that stuff. And again, that's where I said, wow, tech credits in this movie were really good, because it looked amazing on the big glorified or big 70 millimeter screen. So if you saw it, I hope you saw it in a large screen format like XD.
Yeah,
it
and
looked good.
Wally mentioned in an interview that because it was also released on IMAX, he said there were a lot of scenes that he shot in particular that were probably made just for the IMAX experience, because the sound it goes beyond what everyone can see. The sound goes behind them, and he said that some of those scenes were filmed like that on purpose. But he loves 35 millimeter because he says it captures sharpness better, and you can see the color depth within the scenes and capture the layers visually. So that's why those are some reasons why he still loves 35.
Which is interesting, because I wonder how much of that in the digitation process.
Yeah, how it remains. if
Yeah,
there's
you're
any
not
kind of-
showing it on film.
Yeah.
So, look.
What's the translation once you get it actually on the screen, because you're going digital then? So.
Yeah, he was asked if his next project, he'll shoot 35, and my guess is with Transcendence, he'll shoot in whatever they tell him to shoot.
And there are a lot of directors that are still using 35. Spielberg, J.J. Abrams uses
And
35,
well,
and
there's
Star
4.
Wars is going to be filmed on 35. the new Star Wars film that's coming out. So, and even Breaking Bad was filmed. The TV show was filmed on 35. So there are a lot of things still out there. It's not dead yet.
Well, but there's only 4 directors. I mean, like on the whole grand scheme
Paul
of
Thomas
thing,
Anderson as well.
Okay.
There are a
5.
few other names out there.
There
Every week we'll try and find a new
Try to
one.
get to 6. Anyone got 6?
Do I hear 7 anyway?
Just comment and let us know.
And again, with what Christopher Nolan brings to the table, what J.J. Abrams brings to the table, he can say, "I want to film in 35," and the studio is going to say, "Absolutely." Okay. Go ahead and look. Those directors make movies look great. So I can't wait for Interstellar. That Christopher.
But I don't,
Nolan,
but I'm
I
not
can't-
versed enough to know the difference because I honestly, I don't know that and again, I'm just a viewer looking at these things and I'm not in any way a technophile about this stuff, but I don't know if it would matter to me at all whether it was film or not.
We're going to have to do some comparisons.
Yeah.
So.
Visually, I thought it was great. And also that goes with the sound design as well, because Wally said, because the IMAX experience is a great way to watch this film. He said that the sound design built for especially a certain scene when you hear Will's voice in the room when she's in her bedroom house, whatever, and that the way they designed his sound made it more godlike and booming and omnipresent.
Speaking of sound, there was one scene which sound was used, and it was very disconcerting to me.
Oh, when the eating,
She was eating supper, and I'm hearing this crunch sound, and I'm like going, "This isn't a dine-in theater. Who the hell's like who's eating a carrot?" I'm like, "What the hell?" I was like, "Wow!" But it sounded like, to your point, it sounded great.
Where's that coming from?
And she goes, "Would you stop that?" Like this loud
voice of
chewing.
moment.
But it commanded the room.
It did.
though.
It did.
And also
Absolutely.
I love the subtle use of the record player, because that was a constant item throughout the whole film. We see it at the beginning, we see it in the middle, and then we see it again in the end, how it kept stopping. But that was one of the most real items throughout the entire film. And
Analog.
but the
Analog, that's
analog,
right.
because we hear the music at the beginning, and then we hear technology trying to take over, and it's stopping, and then but we hear it again at the end.
But I'm one that will say, I listen to a lot of music. I don't miss the hiss, the pops, the scratches. I don't. Anybody who says that, oh my God, that's like the best. Like I'm going back to buying vinyl. Good luck with you. That's great. I'd rather have clean, awesome sounding music.
Yeah, but going back
but I
to the
get it.
original state
Right.
of which things
Right.
should be at.
Yeah.
And it was a good image.
Yeah.
No, it was a great image, and I understood the sound device that why it was used and all that. But and again, analog to digital and our technology and what this movie was trying to get across, which I think we can all say we understood what it was trying to get across. I just wish it was better executed. That's better written.
I think we've made that point
Yeah.
clear. But since we already talking about sound, how did we feel about the music?
We had the Canadian film composer Michael Dana, who's done most recent projects on Moneyball and Camelot TV series, which is like, I'm a big fan of that show. That was great. And Traveler's Wife. So I felt that the music sound score throughout the film was more orchestral, kind of somewhat meditation type of music, because you're out in the
I felt it was
environment.
very spiritual.
Yeah.
Like there was definitely that balance between some higher power sound to some spaceship sounds. It was very advanced. It was like advanced technology of spiritual music, those sound effects that kind of brought you in the beginning of like, I don't know, it just felt like, oh, expanding. Let's like expand your knowledge.
Yeah, and I could hear in the hospital rooms when you can see the nanotechnology healing things.
Yes.
And I found it as a meditation healing kind of music that you would go to when you're at a spa or something.
It reminded me of Soylent Green, the music when they were playing that stuff. But to me, I noticed it when I guess the nanotechnology was ascending. That's when I first noticed it. I mean, throughout,
Right.
You know, no offense to the gentleman, I'm not going to rush out and buy that soundtrack, but it was fine. It didn't, it didn't hinder the movie experience. That wasn't a problem that I had with the movie.
No,
at all.
I think it was great because we know Christopher Nolan's influence on this film, and every time I think of his movies, I think of Hans Zimmer, which is very boom-tastic and epic. And it was somewhat of an epic film with the visual effects, but it was a different type of
Tone.
Yeah. It was a more lulling kind of
Sure.
music rather than foghorn.
Well, it never really got to that. I mean, there's the promise that it's going to be really expansive and it's going to take on such a huge. I'm not sure of the word, but it never gets to that because we're in this small town and there's this huge array, but it never gets and it just stays so contained, and it never really gets to the expansive point. So,
anybody else think of here's again Lawnmower Man?
Yeah.
Like I was like, this is a Stephen King, and he's Lawnmower Man.
Yeah, we've gone there many times before.
Yeah,
and we'll go there again.
No, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
no worries
it's
about
all
that.
good. Yeah.
So, what else were we missing? What have we been talking?
We talked a little bit about budget.
Yeah, you didn't talk editing. I think we had some challenges with editing, some pacing.
Here's what Sarah just mentioned reception, and I found it interesting. It got released the weekend that it did, and we just knew that it wasn't going to do well because it was Easter weekend, and that's just
a tough weekend.
Never gonna do well.
And I assume they did it because they wasn't getting good buzz before
Feedback.
that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that was
not the weekend to go to die.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think we were talking about this last week. It's just not. It's probably the worst movie-going weekend, unless you're a faith-based film,
right?
Which that Greg Kinnear movie did well.
And they have quite a few faith-based films out right now.
Right, but that movie did well.
Antithetical to that almost.
And to bring it back to religion, we had with Easter, but Holy Week in general, because being Catholic myself and religion, growing up with that, during that week you're supposed to stay away from technology. You're supposed to take that moment where you cut everything off and have that moment of just silence and meditation and not going to see movies. And
at least for 3 hours.
I grew up in my household during a Holy Week. You're not supposed to do anything. You're supposed to sit and pray, and for being released on that type of week where maybe the religious people won't be going out to experience that.
The deck was stacked against it.
So what is it? Do we have numbers on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's opening weekend.
It's 130 budget, right?
Yeah, 135 million budget. That's all in. So
that's all in.
We got to figure the production budget was probably about 100, maybe 105.
Sounds about right.
Their opening weekend domestic gross was 10.8, and it
was wide too, right?
That was wide. Yeah. It was very wide. And to date, it's done about 14 mil to date. Now globally, it's done 30.8, which that means it's not setting any box office records.
That means that they're barely covering Johnny Depp's paycheck, which I believe was 20 million.
Yeah.
So Johnny Depp got paid.
Yeah,
I guess he was smart because it was either 20 million or 15% of
the movie.
And we have to put in there too, like the Rotten Tomatoes was an 18%.
Yeah.
So
which I was actually surprised by.
Me too.
I thought that was a lot lower
That's
than
very low.
Yeah, and but I don't. I think that's critics, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't. What do you happen to know what the audience was saying?
I can
about
find out.
The cinema score.
Yeah, because I'm going 18 really doesn't deserve that. I mean, I thought it was better than an 18 for sure.
I thought it was better than
2 out of 10.
Really? I was shocked. Here's the thing.
Wow. IMDb has it as a 6.4 out of 10.
Yeah. Okay.
I was shocked when I saw the tomato meter because again, I was like, oh, this is Wally Pfister. I'm gonna like this. And I even emailed a friend of mine going, I can't believe this is getting such bad reviews. And and then after I saw it, I was like, ugh, I get it.
Phil, weigh in on that. What do you think that's?
I really wanted to be one of those people that enjoyed it, that wanted to, for whatever reason, prove everybody wrong. But it just, as you kind of guys were mentioning, it didn't go beyond its scope. Yeah. With Inception, with Dark Knight, it just traverses such a world And where here, you're kind of contained within this one town, and then it kind of everyone comes back into the town.
Yeah.
But you could have gone through technology, and especially, the one thing that's never failed us is the internet. Individual parts of the internet have failed us, but it's the one piece of technology that has never gone down. And you could go in and out of any one of those pieces into the computer world. And yes, that's a very specific choice. But I felt like it needed to immerse the world a lot more than it really ended up doing.
You never get to see what he, as a character, Johnny Depp's character, was experiencing, being in that the ethers or whatever it is. You never got to see it, feel it, experience it, nothing.
But we saw it in Lawnmower Man and Johnny Mnemonic and
that's true.
things like that. That also.
Yeah.
Now I noticed you have Rotten Tomatoes up.
So while it is 18% for the tomato meter, the audience is saying 45% liked it.
See that.
And on Cinema Score, it's a C+.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Not terrible.
Yes, it's not.
My only thing is, because going off of Phil's point, it was contained mostly to one certain town.
Right.
That they keep claiming that this is going to affect everyone, but we didn't really see that.
I know.
I would have, because it's already in the sky, it's in the clouds. I mean, I would have
everywhere.
loved to visually seen how it's affecting other countries,
That's what I
how
mean. It
it's affecting
stayed
people
so
out
contained.
there.
It could have been all over them. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so.
It could have
the
been more
promise of so
epic.
much, and then it was like, wow. That's where we went. Okay.
That's also expensive.
Well, I know, but I agree
But
with
they
that.
had the budget to do
That's
it.
true, but at 100 million,
at 100 million, you at 135 million, that means you have budget for a couple of rewrites.
Exactly. That's my point. Is like, wait a minute, but you promised. Well, I shouldn't say that. I looked at it as it's running. Oh, this is going to be amazing, and then it doesn't deliver on those things. And I go, if that's the case, then you should tamp down or manage our expectations a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're not expecting it, because it could have been worked fine as a smaller, more intimate. It's really about the love story between the two of them and how this affects it. I mean, it could have done that too, but it didn't do either.
No. And again, I just say the fault lies within that studio system. Like whoever, whoever the creative exec that said, let's give this 130 mil. I mean, that's the person they should be talking about in the press. Like, forget about Johnny Depp. Like, it's not his. Like,
I don't.
It goes a lot deeper that this movie got greenlit in the stage that it was in.
Yeah.
I and I get it. We've all talked like this is a great concept. It needs work. And there are executives who that's what they do. They give notes. They say, this is how we can make this better. And then when you have a Christopher Nolan, like, he spent a lot of time on Man of Steel, whether you loved or hated that movie. And you can tell his fingerprints were on Man of Steel as far as directing it and the tone of it, because they wanted it to be like his Dark Knights. And this one, it just seemed like, Wally, this is your project. I'm going to support you, but I'm not going to, I'm working on Interstellar. I can't read the script.
But I don't follow. No, I mean, I think if it were, Nolan should have done that. This is your baby, you run it. But
no,
he should have done that. He shouldn't have, because then that's what the director's there for. He's supposed to run the thing.
But to Phil's point, like the projects that Nolan has done are projects that he's been heavily involved, that he's passionate about. And
we don't know.
tough.
I mean, maybe Wally was really passionate about this. I don't know.
I'm sure.
That's the thing. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure he was, and he wanted to take that next step. He goes, "Listen, I've been doing DPing for a while. I won the Academy Award. I've had this amazing opportunity. I've worked with one of the best in the business.
Right.
It's time to.
But
I want to make the next
I'd be
step."
real curious. I would love to be the fly on the wall in those meetings, when the note meetings, and going, okay, the script meetings.
Yeah, you and me both. I don't think they had any.
But that's what I'm wondering. Did anybody bring up? Well, we got a plot hole we got to fill.
Not an issue.
Polonium is pretty deadly on its own, and if doctors and there's no ballistics test, like
because
how do you miss that?
It's a real big challenge when you supposedly have some of the smartest people on Earth, and that's who your main characters are, and they're missing things.
There's a little. You don't have a lot of forgiveness when they're setting you up that way.
Yeah, it's a very big challenge. So you have to be smarter.
That's a really shitty healthcare. Like, his healthcare must have been. He had the crappiest doctors. Going, it's like, well, we noticed polonium on the wounds, but we just sewed them back up.
Do you think for Wally's next project as a director, should he try and tackle another thing of this magnitude because he's had the experience with this?
I don't know.
Or which direction?
I say again, I don't know. I mean, because I don't really have. It depends. I mean, if it depends on how invested he was in the story. If he thought the story, and I imagine he thought the story was great the way it was, the script was great the way it was, and maybe it was when they started it, but it somehow in the editing process there are so many things that they weren't able to convey, or they had to cut out or whatever, and so because of that, we're gonna have to live with that one, because maybe their plot holes were filled, as you said. There were a few that you learned later. Oh, okay, they handled that one.
Yeah,
and maybe they handled them later, but they had to cut them out for time. Who knows?
Yeah, and Wally mentioned that before he did this film, that he went to a lot of different universities and stuff for the research. That he went to study neuroscience, computer science, nanotechnology, and he went to MIT, Northern Cal, Stanford, Berkeley, like all these places to get references. But then I think it was where I was lost, where the explanation of how. Like they explain to us like what's happening, but why is it happening? How is it happening? I think that's where it lost me, that people are not understanding it.
Yeah. I think I'm sure he'll get another gig as a director, so long as he keeps on to. And again, I'm not giving advice. I'm just saying, he will most likely stay with Christopher Nolan. For as long as he can, and why not? Usually
not a bad place to be.
No,
not bad company.
And if given another, I'm sure he'll take the opportunity. What I'm hoping from Wally Pfister's point is that all the negative reviews that he's gotten, that he doesn't take it so much to heart. I could understand that it would sting. Nobody sets out to make a bad movie.
Yeah, and let's face it, we don't even know if he had final cut. I don't even know that. So
that's true. Nobody sets out to make a movie that critics are going to hate and that people aren't going to like too much. And don't take it too much to heart. Allow it to sting, but you've got a future. There's more on the horizon for him. He's like, this by no means means that he's going to go away. He'll still continue to work, and his next film, I would still look forward to his next film because I want to see. Right.
Me too.
So.
All right, well then let's get into the last thoughts. We got to wrap this up. We got to get out of here.
Leave the studio out for the day.
We have to transcend.
I
think for me, I did overall visually enjoy this movie.
Phil obviously wants us out of here. So
you said out of here, and this is such a great way to go out.
Okay.
But
this is so much happier than the film.
I think it was the writing which lost me as a fan of overall. Hardcore fan of this movie. Visually, aesthetically, it was very pleasing. The acting was on point. Maybe not from Johnny, but from everyone else. I think it was the writing that got to me.
Here's what I'm going to say, right?
Okay.
We myself, Dimitri, and John, and our fellow Ian Kaiser, aficionado here, we just did Under the Skin.
Yes.
And that's a very polarizing movie. But it's polarizing because it took risk. And not, people either like the risk, people hate the risk, whatever. But whereas this, especially if you're going to pump this much money into it, take some sort of risk. And it felt like everything was just overall safe. We made a safe $100 million movie.
Well, the biggest risk was spending that much money.
Yeah, there you go.
Any last thoughts?
Wonderful. I mean, I think we've covered most of it. I think that I don't know how to wrap up my thoughts around this, but I don't know if I'll be seeing it again, but I hope to see more from Wally.
There you go. That's nicely said.
And that's a great way to say it.
Absolutely.
Sadly, this happens.
All right.
We're all looking forward to a movie, great concept, and sometimes it just doesn't transcend on the big screen.
All right, Phil, play us out of here, will you? I think we've wrapped everything up nicely.
Absolutely.
There it is.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
Thanks for watching Anatomy of a Movie on YouTube. For more on your favorite movies, subscribe to our channel here and be sure to let us know what you think in our comment section below here. Bye.